Hi everyone, thank you for taking the time to come to my talk. My name is Jacob Fine, and today I'll be discussing how to optimize the level of adaptability in a renewable energy system in the presence of an uncertain model and environment. As is the underlying motivation in all renewable energy research, we're living through a climate crisis. Year after year, global temperatures have risen, leading to an uptick in fires, droughts, and other natural disasters. Luckily, there's still hope in stopping this trend. In the past decade, installed renewable energy capacity has skyrocketed, which will hopefully help us to phase out the use of fossil fuels for power generation within our lifetimes. One of the main dampers on the deployment of renewable energy systems at grid scale is the fact that it's really hard to design a renewable energy system. As pointed out by Pao and Jing, these systems contain strong coupling between the plant, controller, and environment, making them difficult to design and analyze without advanced modeling techniques. It also takes quite a long time to go through the design and installation process for one of these systems, which is made especially challenging when dealing with decaying model uncertainty. The reality of model uncertainty is that it decays over time, and there's a relationship between when you freeze the design and how much uncertainty exists within your model. And lastly, these systems have to operate and harvest energy from a time-varying environmental energy resource, requiring systems to operate in a wide range of conditions. A potential solution to this challenge is the integration of something called real-time adaptability into the design of a renewable energy system. Adaptability can be integrated into either the plant design, enabling real-time reconfiguration, or into the controller design through adaptive control. What you see on the left is the model of an energy harvesting kite I worked on, which can morph its wing geometry to accommodate a very wide range of flow conditions and tether lengths, not to mention providing robustness to model mismatch. What you see on the right is a very large wind turbine developed by Eric Loth and Lucy Pao and their colleagues, which is capable of active coning through its segmented rotor, which enables higher performance over a wide range of operating conditions. We'll examine this application in a lot more detail later on. While both these systems utilize real-time adaptability, there isn't a clear guideline for just how much adaptability to incorporate into a given system. And, as you probably know, for any renewable energy system to be adopted, it needs to be cost competitive with fossil fuel alternatives. This begs the question that my paper aims to address. How do you identify the profit optimal amount of adaptability to incorporate into a renewable energy system? Before I talk about how adaptability can aid in the development of renewable energy systems, we need to start by generally defining adaptability. Looking at this plot on the left, if the x is our nominal system design, the adaptability of our system is the size of the box, also known as our adaptability set. At any point in time, the plant and controller parameters can be adjusted to any point within this box. Crucially, if the center point of this box is mismatched from the optimal system design, optimal performance can still be achieved if the optimum lies within this box. That being said, the size of this box is often constrained by the design of the system itself, and expanding the side lengths of this box comes at an economic cost. Another concept central to this work is the idea of freeze states. Freeze states are when you have to freeze an aspect of your system design, be it the plant or the controller. The further you push off freeze states, the more time you have to improve your system model. The other edge of this sword is that pushing back these dates is expensive, as rush-ordered parts and components drive up costs. The reality is that the more adaptability you incorporate into your system, the less consequential early design freeze dates become. But of course, adaptability itself comes at a cost. When dealing with model uncertainty and a stochastic energy resource, here's the general form of our equation for estimated power generation. This is the estimate of our average power generation for a given PDF of our environmental energy resource, be it waves, wind, or sunshine, and a PDF of our uncertain model parameter, which changes as a function of freeze states. We also note that AP and AC are our adaptability sets for our plant and controller, which contain all achievable plant and controller configurations. We also need to define the total lifetime cost of our system in terms of our adaptability sets and freeze states. The total system cost is the sum of the costs of our baseline plant and controller, adaptive components, delaying freeze states, and lifetime operation and maintenance expenses. Using our models for system cost and average power, all we need to get a useful objective function, expected lifetime profit, is to define the economic value of energy and the expected lifetime of our system. What's really valuable in this objective is that it varies monotonically with levelized cost of energy, LCOE. And this objective is, in itself, in units of economic currency, which makes it pretty easy to justify a project from a financial perspective. To test out the efficacy of the proposed framework, we decided to perform a case study on an existing morphing energy harvesting system. We chose the segmented ultralight morphing rotor, or SUMMER, turbine developed by Lucy Powell, Eric Loth, and Michael Selig's groups. Now, we chose this system in particular to leverage existing cost models. Like a palm tree in the wind, the SUMMER turbine can cone, or fold forward, its blades to reduce the bending load on the root. During operation, the system has 3 control inputs: generator torque, coning angle, and blade pitch. Meanwhile, in our co-design optimization, our non-morphing plant parameter is blade length, our morphing plant parameter is the range of coning angles, and our control parameter is the tip-speed ratio set point, which is constant for a non-adaptive controller and variable for an adaptive control strategy. For those unaware, tip-speed ratio is the ratio of the speed of the blade tip to the free stream wind speed. We can now define the cost of varying the adaptive and fixed design parameters by further drawing from the literature. The cost of physical adaptability is continuous and based on just how much we want the rotor to cone. Meanwhile, the cost of incorporating controller adaptability is discrete and depends on which control strategy we select, noting that an adaptive control strategy, which allows for the tracking of a variable tip-speed ratio set point, has higher development cost associated with it. The cost of pushing back a design free state is challenging to capture as it's dependent on project-specific logistics and requirements. In this initial case study, the costs varied quadratically with the delay in the controller free state and cubically with the delay in the plant free state. This is done under the practical assumption that the plant free state must occur prior to the controller free state. Using a quasi-static surrogate model for performance and coefficients of power and thrust identified through blade element momentum theory, we can calculate power generation as a function of coning angle, wind speed, tip speed ratio set point, and blade length. We can also calculate bending load on our turbine blades, which acts as our structural constraint. Next, we need to characterize our environmental energy resource. For a wind resource, this can be done using a Weibull distribution. In this case study, we fit a Weibull distribution to some wind data gathered near Lansing, Michigan, our intended installation site. In this case study, we considered that our uncertain model parameter was a multiplier on the true power coefficient of our turbine, delta Cp, which is a term that shows up in both our objective and constraint. Here's what our overall true objective looks like, without considering any adaptive plant or controller parameters, with the optimal fixed design plotted in red. This objective is constructed under the assumption that it's possible to sell energy to the grid for 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Keep in mind that this is the true objective, which doesn't depend on our free states, which have an impact on our model certainty. Here, we've prepaid for a bunch of different adaptability sets and plotted their respective performances as a function of free state. The free state that corresponds to the best performance is shown as an X on each surface. This allows us to determine both the profit optimal adaptability set size and the optimal free state for each set. By prepaying for an appropriately sized adaptability set, we can improve the lifetime profit of a system by nearly $2 million. This corresponds to a levelized cost of energy of about 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Now that we've completed our co-design optimization, we want to test out how an actual system would perform to make sure our quasi-static surrogate model accurately estimated realized system performance. Here's how we can model the dynamics of the SUMMER. Notably, if we want to simulate dynamic performance of the system, we need to implement some real-time control strategies that provide a mechanism for realizing adaptation. Here's one method of doing just that. In this work, the power optimal tip-speed ratio, cone angle, and pitch set points are calculated offline as a function of wind speed after the design was finalized. These tip-speed ratio and coning angle set points are tracked directly via modulation of generator torque and cone angle, whereas the fast-acting pitch controller, pulled from the literature, is set to track the minimum allowable blade pitch that won't violate our power or moment constraints. This gives us a little bit more robustness in assuring that we don't violate our constraints, even in the event of a sudden gust or significant model mismatch. While the control architecture shown on the last slide was shown to work well in our conference publication, this strategy lacked robustness to model mismatch and degradation in the aerodynamic properties of the blades, as our coning angle and tip speed ratio are tracked based on set points identified offline. Furthermore, similar to other architectures in the literature, the architecture on the previous slide relies on direct measurement of wind speed, which can be challenging to measure. To address this, a more robust, adaptive control strategy was adapted from Mario Rotea's work and implemented in our ongoing work. Specifically, extremum seeking control was used to modify the gain K in a classic K omega squared torque controller. Extremum seeking control allows for an objective function, in our case power generation, to be maximized in real time without an explicit model for the system by climbing an estimate of the gradient of our objective. At the same time, the coning controller was changed to a discrete clamping PID controller intended to drive the blade pitch to zero, noting that curtailment via coning is more energetically efficient than pitch curtailment. Meanwhile, the pitch controller remained the same. Now let's take a look at some of our simulation results, where we simulated the turbine's performance over a 24-hour period using wind data from our installation site in Lansing, Michigan. Even in strong winds, the system didn't violate the mechanical power or structural constraints. Furthermore, energetic performance predictions, computed using the quasi-static surrogate model used in the co-design optimization, deviated by less than 1% as compared to the dynamic simulation results, thus validating our surrogate model. As a quick preview into the upcoming extension of this work, we compared the performance of the more adaptive control strategy I mentioned a moment ago to an existing control strategy from the literature, using the same wind data. Here, the more adaptive strategy outperforms the baseline strategy by about 5.5% over a 24-hour simulation, without direct measurement of wind speed. To wrap things up, the proposed co-design architecture has the potential to improve the lifetime economic performance of renewables in the face of uncertainty. Now, what's next for this work? In the future, the development cost models used within the co-design framework will be further refined. Thank you for listening, and feel free to chat with me at MECC if you have any questions.